Hey, what's going on everyone? Liger here, and today I'm bringing you a game called Irae for Weeaboo Wednesday. I just went through like a whole long title screen. Alright, May 1st, 1945, Berlin, Germany. So I guess it takes place during World War II. It's rocking out. The closing act of the Second World War was the manifestation of total war such as had never been seen before. No, the term carnage would have been more appropriate. Outmanned in every way, Berlin stood in complete isolation, slipping towards the crevice of annihilation. That sounds like something you'd find in a Sonic game, that song. The nearly 500,000 troops marching under the banner of the Red Army had already surrounded the capital, making escape virtually impossible. Is that like the Russians? Guns roared, mingling with the screams of the dying and the innocent. Cacophony, I don't even know. Use some hard words of terror as the city was razed and its people massacred. Bloodshed, carnage, all in order to eradicate the enemies of this world. Be they young or old, men or women. Justice, revenge, love, peace, oppression, liberty, equality, the slogan one chose to attach to the horror made little difference. The chaos engulfed the bloody streets, demonstrated quite readily the atrocities that would manifest when man was presented with a covenant higher cause to justify them with. Yes, for example, a bang in this corner of the city. A blinding light flash followed by a roaring explosion. Alright, so this game you do have to pay for, but there's like they have like a little free prologue to it, so I guess you get to like experience the game if you want to get it or not. This latest bombardment sent even more soldiers, at least 3, whose silhouettes were still recognizable human, to their deaths, spreading their remains across the pavement. Yeah. Is this how the... Letting out a loud curse, a man leapt out of the trenches with Panzerfaust in hand. So, protected by the covering fire of his allies, Schmeisers, he dashed over into effective firing range. He rose to his knees, took aim, and pulled the trigger, firing a heat warhead. The projectile shot forward, smashing right into the flank of a tank. That's the weakest part. On a lot of tanks, the weakest part is behind. Its armor dissolved in ordnance with the Newman effect, and the tank imploded in a torrent of liquefied metal and 1,000-degree flames. The man tossed aside his Panzerfaust and backed his comrades from behind, started cleaning up his remaining foes with his Mauser. Such was war. It allowed no time for idle thoughts, so I guess this guy's a German. Only slaughter, murder, and bloodshed. No man could keep his sanity in this hell. And so the preparations of this chaos howled and raged, never looking back, revealing in boundless insanity to keep their blood afire. You know, in the new Call of Duty that they're coming out with, the World War II one, they don't have any swastikas for the Germans, they just put the like Iron Cross. Within this flaming wasteland of gunplay, soldiers single-mindedly continued their murderous stance, as if it was some ungodly ritual. So yeah, the whole swastika thing, it's basically banned in a lot of places, so they didn't want to like just make one version of the game and then make another version. Of course, in reality, it was all but child's play. Soldiers against soldiers, rifles against pistols. No matter how fiercely they fought on this battlefield, the outcome of this war was already set in stone. The Third Reich had crumbled. the ambitions of its visionary leader lost in the flames of war. What remained on that tattered battlefield was the shaken remnants of the defeated, and the mob of the victors, flocking like vultures to the smell of decaying flesh. Certain death. Inescapable defeat. Any attempt to retaliate was merely a self-serving act of revenge, with no hope of salvation. Since the situation had surpassed anything that might elicit notions of despair, transforming into no more than an absurd comedy of sorts. And yet, that ain't German, that's Japanese. His heart beat still, his hand grip still. He would not stop, so long as there were enemies to kill. Another explosion, another one. For it was sworn duty, if there existed even one thing, anything at all, to justify this hellfire, be it sheer insanity, then by itself would have been a blessing in disguise. Honor and glory, debased and disgraced, worth less than pig shit, and yet human life remained the cheapest currency. Man, when do I get to see the characters? That was reality. I went through like a 5-minute intro. Didn't read any of it because it was boring as hell. This better not be the whole text box. This is like a huge text box. After wiping out the leftover foes and regroup with his comrades, it dawned upon the man that there were only 3 of them left standing, himself included. The company tasked with protecting this block had been completely annihilated. The situation was anything but promising, as still more enemies were on their way. You can't just keep using those. Where are they at? Berlin? Yeah, they lost the war. But the war ain't over yet. The young man flashed a bitter smile as he handed over the Schmeiser to another. Is that Schmeiser? I don't even know. The older man glared at him, but offered no more in the way he reproached. This war is lost. Indeed, that was the bitter truth of it. Berlin had fallen, the company massacred, and the remaining 3 soon to join them. Why not just stick your hands up in the air and say, or, you know, tie a white flag or something, be like, I surrender. But if it's the Russians, they really don't want to take prisoners, so they just, I think, just kill them all. I hate this text box window. It's so freaking huge. What in the world? The Master Sergeant, Walter Gerlitz, directed his gaze at the final survivor of the company, a young boy who had thus far remained silent. That's a girl. The boy, eyes darting as he failed to hide his shock, was even younger than Joachim, barely in his teens. I think that was something that they were going to do with the Germans. I think the Germans were going to send in child troops. If Walter had a son, he might have been around the same age. Marco Schmidt? Walter was about to ask what a mere child was doing there, but ultimately swallowed his words. It was a foolish question. The enemy would show no mercy to them, not even to children. The reason for it was very clear. They were the bitter enemies of the Red Army, the despised members of the Schutzstaffel, Even if they were to surrender, the Soviets were doubly uninterested in taking them as prisoners. That's what I was saying. Like, as such, fighting until their last breath was the only option left to them. Walter was certain that Joachim was ready to give his life for the fatherland. The boy, on the other hand, well, it became... They put a wall, like, in the middle of Berlin, and they just divided it, and that started, like, the Cold War, and then finally they just broke the wall, you know, and then, I don't know, it's a peaceful country now. Gotta ask Hitler, be like, what will come of this place? And then he went to his bunker and he just shot himself. Joachim shed his disaffected act, the bitter tone in his voice, making his true positions on the situation clear. Let me see some people. I know there's people. I saw people. I looked at the freaking screenshots. There were people. What if I click this X? Would it just like exit this whole thing? He would never surrender yet, even if he gave his life in the battle to come. The outcome of the war has already been decided. Nothing could change that, least of all himself. With this defeat, their fatherland and their descendants would. A single soldier was powerless to alter the great current of the war. Joachim tried to express his dissatisfaction with the reality as best he could, while Marco silently listened. Did he die? Gunshots. Several rifles shots echoed from their left just then. Dang. Walter and Marco just barely managed to duck into cover, but Joachim was not so fortunate. His head was shot clean off, dang, by the first wave, following an entire volley of bullets being unloaded into his chest. His head was shot clean off? What kind of bullets were these? 50 cal? Pelted by machine gun fire, Joachim's body contorted in a queer manner, almost reminiscent of some form of dance before finally hitting the ground. An anticlimactic final, indeed, for the youth, who had only moments prior expressed his desire to fight to the bitter end. Well, he did. But such was the reality of the situation, the reality of war. There were no heroes here, no messiahs or miracles to save them, only men dying like insects. And should one allow his soul to be overcome by wrath or despair when confronted with this knowledge, it would serve only to invite the jaws of death to consume him next. Yeah, the chaos of war would not tolerate idle thoughts. Knowledge of one's duty was all that was necessary. He's dead! As Walter rolled into safety of the ruined building, he shouted the name of his own surviving comrade with all the strength he could muster, but instead of words, another one. The sole reply he received was yet another flash, followed by a fiery explosion. A hand! We finally get something! A hand! We get a hand! The upper half of the young boy's body was flung at Walter's feet, so he's like in half. The cramped alleyway was heavy with the stench of blood and scorched entrails. Walter powerlessly dropped to his knees into the vast sea of blood. The music's so loud you can't even hear the boy talk. Marco smiled even as the last embers of his life faded away. It was unbelievable someone could still form words in a state such as this. Walter took the boy's hands. The Holocaust isn't real. It's stupid. What? Of course the Holocaust is real. No, people think it was all fake propaganda. But we got pictures and videos of people coming out of concentration camps, all freaking skin and bones. As the gunfire continued, a brand new tank rolled onto the battlefield. Marco Schmidt was beyond help. Not even God could save him now. And so, Walter's rightful place now was on the battlefield, his hand clutching a gun, and not the boy of the dying soldier. His ears lent not to the naive parting remarks of the boy, but straining to hear the breathing of his enemy. He knew that better than anyone, and yet you're just a young boy. You don't know. You haven't committed no crimes. You were forced to do this, and that's what's fucked up about it. Oh, I think I skipped his words. It's so hard to hear him. Joachim, Walter, and so many other German soldiers just like them had done nothing more than take up arms to protect their fatherland and loved ones. Was that truly a sin? Surrounded by the flames of the dying capital, the young boy spoke in mere disjointed fragments, voicing a question Walter himself would have loved to pose to the heavens above. How's this boy still alive? Yet after mere seconds of doubt, Walter answered curtly. Losing a war is a sin? Dang. Such was the way of the world, a cruel, bitter truth. What is it? Say it as you will, but the losers of wars are the enemies, the winners are the heroes. So if the Nazis won, then I guess we would be saying the Nazis are the heroes. Walter found himself a growing resentment for the Lord. Marco Schmidt then quietly passed away in Walter's arms. The man gazing up at the heavens, the young soldier's smile in death, albeit tainted with blood and mud, still held traces of boyhood. The music's so fucking loud. A bitter smile mirroring Marco's crept into Walter's face. God. Hey. Oh wow, I can actually check the recording time. I'm on 19 minutes. His words might have seemed the ramblings of a lunatic beset by the armies of death, but they were more than that. Walter cocked his Schmeiser, confirmed it was loaded, then charged out of the run building into the open, and died. He unconsciously let out a battle cry, loud enough that it threatened to rend his throat. Would he end up gunned down like Joachim, or share the same fate as Marco? It hardly mattered anymore. Either way, he'd merely die a miserable death befitting this miserable war. His mind was occupied by such despaired thoughts. In no way would he have predicted what was to come next. What is that? Our Father who art in heaven, Hallowed be thy name.
彼らに永遠の安息を与え
Grant them eternal rest, O Lord, and may everlasting light shine upon them. Is that the Lord's Prayer? It was his soldier's intuition that drove Walter to reflexively take shelter. Oh shoot, we had something there. His vision was drowned out by blinding white light, and an explosion so fierce it dwarfed all previous bombardments, an explosion that seemed to be rip apart the very heavens. It was God himself. Walter realized that this explosion was far beyond the level of any weapon that could have possibly been employed in urban warfare. It was a nuke. What in the world? What happened? The city had literally staked his life. To protect had been reduced to a charred wasteland. Although it took quite a while for Walter to regain his sight and hearing, there was still not enough time for him to make sense of the situation. Part of him wondered if it was all a sick joke. Only one thing was clear. Both his allies' corpses and the encroaching enemy troops had been annihilated. What? No bombing raid could have inflicted such immense damage. And although Walter had managed to survive the attack itself, his resulting wounds were deep. Pieces of steel and concrete blasted in his direction by the explosion had pierced his back and flank. And songs kick ass. The hand that once held his smiter was blown off from the elbow. It wasn't even worth the effort to attempt to discern the number of more minor injuries. His insistent bloody vomit told him that he had also suffered severe internal damage. He would not make it. I always want to know how you said it in Japanese. Walter swore blindly, no longer certain of the target of his I don't even know. Just then, the voice from before rang out again. Hear my prayer, O Lord. To you all flesh shall come. I'm gonna say it anyways. Return unto thy rest, O my soul, for the Lord hath dealt bountifully with thee. It was a requiem offered up to fallen soldiers, one sung in a beautiful voice. Not even a prestigious church choir could produce a melody quite this dignified. It wasn't that dignified. Yet at the same time, the scorn seeping into the voice was all too evident. Only upon the eve of the apocalypse itself could such a voice be conceived of an angel's. It sung of the dead with scorn, ridicule, and mockery, deriving the utmost pleasure in trampling upon every last remnant of the dignity they possessed. The voice of the destroyer, intoxicated by mayhem. This was the product of a black mind possessed solely by an inhuman malice. Grant them eternal rest, O Lord, and may everlasting light shine upon them. And so, stepping onto the vast expanse of debris, the destroyer appeared, that demonic requiem at his lips. Are we gonna see something? We're gonna see something. Jeez, you look scary as hell. It was a young boy, lacking in years even in comparison to Marco, with a face so delicate that a glance could easily mistake his features of those of a girl. Yeah, I almost thought it was a girl too. But I was wondering, like, you said it was delicate? That's scary. A single look at the boy was enough to give Walter chills. His teeth began to chatter. Dang. Looks amazing. That's like amazing. Like, I don't know what to say. It's like, it looks really good. Although he had lost a considerable amount of blood and his vision had grown hazy, the reason behind the freezing chill at his back lay elsewhere. The sheer enmity, I don't even know, and bane radiating from the boy's visage indeed contributed to that. But to Walter, the most dreadful thing was the fact that he knew that face. There lived no man who fought on the Eastern Front and knew not of this boy. You know who this is? A beast possessed by an insatiable hunger. His aberrant mind ruled by inhuman madness. His single eye gleamed, silver locks swaying. Yeah, I saw that he had an eye patch. He gripped a pair of guns, each engraved with a wolf's sangle, the rune of the wolf. They're talking about that thing right there. There was no doubt it was a face Walter could never forget. The face of a boy who supposedly died 3 years ago. Who is it? He's a major? Eastern Front Assault Corps Special Unit Leader, SS Major Wolfgang Schreiber. I used to know a man named Wolfgang. He was like a boss at a place I used to work at. An unchained beast that slaughtered both friends and foe. The ashen demon that had supposedly met his end during a purge. How could he be standing there? Are you the one that was saying the Lord's Prayer? Hardly the words one would offer a dying comrade, especially one whose death was most likely caused by Schreiber himself. The boy flashing an innocently devilish smile in front of Walter was no doubt the very same person he remembered. And yet, his armband bore not the swastika, but a different symbol altogether, almost as if he were no comrade at all. Yeah, I see that, it's not a swastika. Murder is currency. The boy playfully surveyed the landscape. It was proof enough of his statement, and what followed was nothing short of unnatural. Something akin to opaque vapor erupt in their vicinity, like a fog or a haze. Look at that! There's ghost. Just whoa. At the same time, Walter's senses were assaulted by a dreadful moaning. You can hear it. Oh my goodness. These were the cursed cries of the fallen, fated to suffer and limit until the very end of time. This endless course of limitation caused even the seething air of the battlefield to cool. These were the spirits of the dead. Walter felt like he could almost make out the faces of Marco and Joachim among the swirling mass, as well as the destination towards which they were spiraling. And I'm gonna leave it off right there. I can't really record anymore. It's like 30 minutes now into it. So, hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and a comment. I'll see you guys next time on another Weeaboo Wednesday with another game. Goodbye, everyone.